Hi, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about a concept that kind of rolled around in my head a little bit over the past week or so. I had something come up that kind of bring this idea to my head, and to be honest, what the incident had nothing to do with my writing stuff. It was more about my counseling work, and that's the notion of sensitivity readers and what are they. What are they used for, and those sort of ideas. And I had never heard of sensitivity readers before I became a writer. I don't know if it's the sort of thing that most readers really know about or read about. I guess maybe if you spend a lot of time on Goodreads, then that it might be a concept that comes up. But never in my life did I think about something like sensitivity readers. And so what they are sensitivity readers are people who will read your manuscript. This is before publishing, and look for ways in which you might have offended somebody or gotten something wrong or not depicted it the way it's supposed to be. And we're talking about really like different demographic groups. So there are LGBT sensitivity readers. I hear they're pretty popular. There's people of color sensitivity readers, and probably all the different little different colors in there. The people with disabilities kind of sensitivity readers. And I'm sure if you were to Google it, you'll probably find there's a long list of people who specialize in different kind of sensitivity readers. And like I said, what they do is they kind of read through the book and they look through and they look for any kind of language that might offend somebody or portray some group in a negative light, or how they see it as a negative light, because it is really that person's opinion. Usually it's that one person's opinion. And to be honest, because not all like LGBT people are the same. Actually, the four letters, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, those are four different kind of groups of people with four different very kind of views on life. And to be honest, they don't always necessarily get along either. And so within just the LGBT crowd, you'd need all these others. And so that one sensitivity reader who reads, even though she is a lesbian, she studied lesbian studies in college, doesn't necessarily mean she speaks for all lesbians. Probably not even close. And so what you're really getting is that one person's opinion on what your book says and what may or may not be offensive. And mind you, you're paying them because they get paid. You're paying them to look for things that are offensive. They're going to find it. That's just how it works. And it's true with a lot of editors as well. It's one of the things I've found irritating with some editors is that a lot of times they will suggest changes not because there's something wrong with it. It's just because it's not how they would have said it, or something along those lines. And so because they're getting paid to find stuff wrong, at least that's how they think. I think that's how some editors think, is I'm supposed to find the stuff that's not working, that's not right. And so you start digging for it. Well, a sensitivity reader is someone who digs for something that is offensive, and they'll find it. They'll eventually find it. I mean, if someone wants to be offended, they will be offended. And I want to also distinguish sensitivity readers from like what I'd call cultural experts. Try and distinguish between the two. Let's say I was writing a Western. It takes place in the 1870s, and I want it to take place, at least in part, in like the Comanche tribe. I want to pull in the Comanche Indians into the story and stuff. And I want to do it right. I want to get it accurate. This is a real group of people who really existed. They really still do exist. And they had a real culture, and people have studied them. And so it's worthwhile getting it right. Just like if I was writing a story in Russia or anything else, I would want to get the time period right, the culture right, that sort of thing. Unless I'm just entirely going for a fantasy setting, in which case I just make up the rules as I go. But in this case, let's say I want to make a fairly historically accurate Western that involves the Comanche Indians. Well, I'd go out and find someone who's an expert on the Comanches. Maybe they are a tribal elder. Maybe they're an anthropologist or a historian, and they know in depth. I would kind of want to know, like, what part of the country did they really live in? What sort of food did they eat? What sort of clothes did they wear? What sort of language did they have? What's their name? that sort of thing. As much as we can about their religion or whatever. That way, so when I'm writing the story, it's as accurate as it can be. I'm not really worried about offending people in that sense, other than, when you get something wrong, some people don't like it. That's different than a sensitivity reader that would start nitpicking on, like, is Redskins offensive or not, or should you say Indian or Native American, or these sort of things. Really, it's much more geared upon what would some people of today find offensive? And a lot of times it has nothing even to do with the groups that were in question, like a lot of Native Americans or whatever. They don't really care. It's the American Indian movement, AIM. They were sort of like the Black Panthers of the Native American group. Do they like being called Native Americans? I heard of one Indian speaker who likes being called Indian because it just reminds everybody that Columbus got it wrong. He thought he was kind of point out that he's an idiot. Because in reality, if you're in one of these tribes, that's the name we should be calling you. If you're a Comanche, we should be calling you Comanche. If you are, Pawnee, we should be calling you Pawnee. Or one of these other tribes like that, Cherokee, whatever. Because that's actually their name. We lump them together as Native Americans, just like we lump Europeans together. But in reality, there's a difference between Germans and French and that sort of thing. Got a little off topic there. But that's, to me, the difference between a sensitivity reader and a cultural expert. In my mind, sensitivity readers are the modern day censors. And we used to have those, especially back in the 50s, the 60s, at various levels. We saw this in the comic book industry for a long time. You do a quick Google search on the history of comic books. And in the early days of comics, people just made whatever they wanted. It was great. There's like horror comics, there's superhero comics, there's crime comics, there's all these different kind of comics. Well, at some point, I think in the 1940s, maybe it's even the 30s, but I think it was the 40s, comic books became villainized and said, oh, that's the reason for juvenile delinquency. People are reading these horrible comics about murder and mayhem, and that's the reason why young kids today don't respect their elders or whatever. And so they imposed a code on the comics. And for a long time, even when I was a little kid, there was this little square up in the corner that said this comic book had been approved, and that tells you that basically this book went through the censors. These people didn't make the comics better. That wasn't their job. They didn't come up with new ideas. They didn't make new art. They didn't come up with new storylines. Their job was to tell people like Stan Lee and the folks over at DC Comics, you can't say this, you can say this. If you put this in there, you won't get your little thing, and no one will sell your comic book. And for decades, that was how it was. To some degree, the movie industry is kind of like that. It's not as bad anymore, mainly because movies have just gotten so diversified and distributed in so many different ways. It doesn't matter what the rating of a movie is anymore. If it's good, if Amazon thinks they can sell it or Netflix thinks they can sell it, they'll just stick it up, and they don't really care anymore. And thanks to the internet, anyone can make a movie, and it doesn't matter how wild or crazy or offensive or how violent or anything else it is, it's out there. People can find it. And I think comic books, of course, nowadays are like that too. At one point, they just sort of dropped it. I forget what it was. I think there was a Spider-Man comic in which they were talking about drugs, and I think it didn't get, the censors wouldn't okay it, wouldn't get them a little thing, and they sold it, and nothing happened. And the comic got sold, people bought it, it's kind of a famous comic, and that was about it. In my mind, sensitivity readers are the modern day censors. Their job is to tell writers, you can't say this, you can say this. You have to change it this way or you change it this way. And if you don't, well, the Twitter mob will come out and hound you because you said a naughty word or anything else like that. And censorship should just offend everybody anyway. Who is someone else to tell you what you're allowed to say, what sort of art you're allowed to create, what sort of writing you're allowed to put out there? That's none of their business. As George Carlin put it, and he was talking about music at the time, radio has two knobs. One lets you change the channel, and the other one lets you just turn it off. So if you don't like the song coming on, just, you got options. Change the channel or just turn it off entirely. And in today's world, you've got even more options than that. There are tens of thousands of radio stations, who knows how many cable stations, and that's not even like including all the streaming and that sort of thing. Same thing with books. People are cranking out books left and right and that sort of thing. So if this author says things that hurt your feelings, don't buy their stuff. Buy somebody else's stuff. But that doesn't give you a right to shut down that author and that sort of thing. And really, even just from a creative perspective, too. I think creativity happens best when you can, as much as you can, tap into your subconscious. Our conscious mind, the thing that really thinks things through, it has a limited level of creativity. It has some, but it works within a nice, narrow box. Our subconscious, however, will make wild leaps in logic. It will connect ideas that you can't logically figure out how they connect at all. The subconscious speaks in the language of emotion and metaphors. That's how it works. And that's why dreams can be simultaneously both powerful and really weird. But you can make great leaps of logic and learn new things through your dreams. That's why with my clients, a lot of times I like to discuss what they're dreaming about, because it kind of gives me an idea of what their brain is working on at a deeper level. But that critical voice that sits up there and says, ooh, I don't know if I should say that. Or if I write that might piss somebody off. Oh, if I draw that, what will my mother think? My fans might not like this if I put this in there, that sort of thing. If you've got that going on, it's kind of like trying to run a marathon with ankle weights on. It's maybe you can do it. You're not going to do it really well, and probably not be able to finish it all. It is restricting, because that critical voice is basically telling your creative voice, nope. You have to work within this little box, okay? See this little box that I like working in? Okay, I'm going to make your box a little bit bigger, but you still need to be working in a little box. And really, for, I think, creative work, you at least need to pretend like the box isn't there. Maybe you can never 100% get rid of that little box that your mind works within. But you should, at least as much as you can, try and pretend like it doesn't exist. It's one of those aspirational goals. You may never reach it, but you should at least aspire to try. The notion of sensitivity readers is someone else putting you in their box and deciding this is the world in which you have to work in. And if you don't, then you're a bad person. Bad things happen to you or whatever. As one person said, I don't know if it's like a quote that's just gone around or if maybe it was attributed to somebody, but you cannot be honest unless you're willing to risk offending someone. That if you are second-guessing what you are saying, then you can't really be honest. You will always at least be guilty of lies by omission, because you will keep your mouth shut about something because you're worried about how it might offend somebody else. And offense can never be given, it can only be taken. If someone's offended, that's up to them. That's an emotion. And I get on my clients about this all the time. You have no control over what other people feel. You have no control over what they think. According to some neuroscientists, you can't really even control what you feel. So you sure as hell can't control what somebody else is feeling. And you can never really truly guess what might offend somebody, because you don't know what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what their experience is like. And then, of course, there's, unfortunately, in this world today, there are people who are just looking to be offended. And so it doesn't really matter what you say or what you do or what you don't say or what you don't do. They'll probably find something anyway. So in that case, in all those cases, you might as well at least just be as honest as you can with yourself. And if you're creating something, especially if you're writing, your writing is an aspect of yourself. It is a part of you in some way. You are at least the filter through which that message is received. As I think her name's Julia Cameron, the woman who wrote The Artist Way, which I should do a video on that too. She likes to describe it that the actual creative process is the light of God passing through you like a prism, that you do affect the light as it passes through you, but you are not the light. You are what transmits it out into the world. It might be a little foofy, but if you think of it in those sort of ways, any sort of little filter that you put on there, I'm not allowed to say this, I can't say this, that sort of thing, then you're filtering out the light. And you never know when you might actually end up just blocking it off and nothing is allowed to get through. So on that point, let me just be very clear to all my current readers or future readers. I will never ever use a sensitivity reader. I will always try and be as honest as I can in my creative work. And I hope I don't offend people. At least that's not my intention. At least I can't think of right now. Maybe someday I'll want to write a book that'll piss everybody off. But, you know, I can't really control what anyone thinks or feels. And so, anyway. So anyway, I hope you like this video. I'm going to have a link to all my my website, my other books down below. And hopefully you'll check one of those out. And I will see you next time. Bye.